Hello, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Job Done Right. We stream a new episode every 2 weeks, starting in the spring and going through fall. Our goal is to provide useful advice on controlling weeds and insects and growing forage, grass, and wildlife food plots. If you find Job Done Right useful, we hope you'll subscribe, share it with your friends, and let us know your thoughts. We make new episodes based on your input, so voice your opinion. Our guest today is Mike Massey, CEO and co-owner of Ragan Massey, and he's here to talk about safety. Safety is a frequent theme on this podcast, and it should be your first consideration when applying herbicides and pesticides. You need to keep yourself safe while also protecting other people and animals and the environment. Let's bring Mike Massey into the conversation. Mike, welcome back to the podcast. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Good to see you, Angie.
Well, whenever we chat, one thing you always stress is read the label when it comes to any Ragan Massey product. I've seen the labels. They can be long, they can be intimidating, but we do want to break it down for people today. So let's first off talk about why the label is so important.
Well, the very first thing and the most important thing that you'll find in the label is safety information. It's generally at the very front of the label. So at the very first thing, it talks to you about what kind of hazards you face in using our product, what kind of practices you should have in applying the product, and what kind of personal protective clothing you should wear. Then you will read on through the label, you'll find out what crops it can be applied to, what rates it can be applied at, and what equipment you need to apply the product. So all the information you need to use the product is in the label. But if you can't understand the label, or you're having difficulty with the label, give us a call or consult your county extension agent for help in understanding the label.
Could there be any legal implications if people don't follow the label directions?
Oh, it's the law that you should follow the label in handling pesticides. Another thing that's important about that is you want to protect your land and your property and your neighbor's land and property and animals and pets too. So the risk of the product are outlined in the label, and you'll know what risk you have if you read the label.
One part of the label talks about keeping the person who's using the product safe. Often personal protective equipment, or PPE as we know it now, is required. What kind of advice do you have when it comes to PPE? Is this stuff we may already have in our home, or do we need to go out and buy some special stuff?
Well, it's going to depend on your particular pesticide, but all the Ragan Massey pesticides can mostly be applied with stuff you'll find at your house. You should always wear a long sleeve shirt, long pants. You should wear chemical resistant gloves, not leather or cotton, but more like a plastic glove of some sort. You should wear glass protection, safety glasses, and wear plastic shoes or rubber boots, any of the things that won't absorb the pesticides. Now, you may read other labels that require the use of respirators or require the use of face shields, things like that. But all of that information will be available at the beginning of the label, and it'll tell you what you should do.
What if you get some product on your shoes or your clothes? Do you recommend, tossing them out, removing them before you go inside, or can you just keep them in the wash and you're good?
If they're leather or tennis shoes or something like that, you may want to toss them, but you certainly want to wash them and don't take them in the house. And if they're plastic or something like that, you still want to store them outside, store them in the shed or in the barn where you keep your pesticides.
Sure. Now, most Ragan Massey products are concentrated, meaning they have to be mixed with another liquid, typically water. Do you have any advice for best practices when it comes to mixing your products?
Well, know what you're putting in the tank mix. And if you use a measuring cup or something like that out of your kitchen, don't use it in the kitchen again. But know what you're putting in, know how much you're putting in. If it's a powder, know how to weigh it. If it's a liquid, be sure you have a good measuring device so that you know how much pesticide you're using and you know how much water you're mixing with it. Other things you want to be sure you do is that you empty your containers properly. Inside the label, it'll talk about disposal of empty containers, and it'll also talk about not just dumping anything you have left in the sprayer. Use it only on target pests. Use it if you're spraying a fence row and you got a little herbicide left over, find another fence row to spray it down. Don't just dump it. And then once you have emptied your sprayer, it's a good practice to wash out that sprayer with a good sprayer cleaner. That'll make your pumps last longer, and it'll keep your residuals down in your tank, and just as a good practice all around.
I think people sometimes probably assume if they mix more product than is recommended, they might see better results. Is that the case?
That's not true. Follow the label rates. The label rates will save you money, and they'll be effective in where you apply it. So don't think you're doing more with more. Just read the label and follow the label rates in the label, and be sure to apply it only on the target pest and on the target weeds that are specified in the label.
Now, sometimes it says there could be a risk of exposure. What is meant by that, and how do people lower the risk?
Well, if you think about it, there's a lot of ways you're exposed to any substance. You can get a substance through your eyes, through your skin, you can inhale it, anything like that. So it's going to tell you on the label what kind of exposure risk you have. If it's a skin problem, if it's an inhalation problem, if it has characteristics that, are bad on your eyes, you need to prepare for that and wear the proper protective clothing when you see those recommendations.
Anywhere you suggest storing your Ragan Massey products, maybe away from children or where pets can get them?
Always store them away from children. Store them up high. Store them in a place that's climate controlled if you have it, or certainly protect them from hard freezes or extreme heat.
And what about re-entering an area that has been applied with a product? Is there always recommendations for that on the label?
In the label, it'll tell you whether or not when you can re-enter a field and when you can't re-enter a field. Most of our products have no re-entry restrictions once the spray is dried. But always, whatever pesticide you're using, always look at the label on it. And if there's a re-entry restriction in the label, it'll tell you. It'll tell you if you can't go in a field for 8 hours or something like that, it will be in the label.
So every label I've seen contains what they call signal words, and these are important words, so I want to go over them quickly and what they all mean. Starting off with caution, which means a pesticide product is slightly toxic if eaten or absorbed through the skin, inhaled, and it can cause eye or skin irritation. The next level up would be warning, which indicates that the pesticide product is moderately toxic if eaten or absorbed through the skin, inhaled, and it can cause moderate eye or skin irritation. And then above that, danger could be written, which means it's highly toxic by at least one route of exposure, could be corrosive, it could cause irreversible damage to the skin or eyes. These words are required, I understand, to be on the label, and there's a testing process they go through.
That's right. And you should certainly heed those warnings. Pay attention to that. If you buy a pesticide with a skull and crossbones on it, you're dealing with a very dangerous chemical. It has a lot of human health issues that you have to prepare for, and that you have to have the right protective clothing and the right application gear and things like that. But do heed those different warning labels. And like you said, the labels, the signal words increase in danger to a human. Those signal words are not about crops. It's about danger to the applicator and danger to other people. So pay attention to those signal words.
Definitely important to know. Now, Mike, as always, we ask people that view the podcast or engage with us on social media for some questions. So we have a few of those today. The first question somebody asked is, what should I do with empty herbicide and insecticide bottles? Can they be reused or recycled?
The label will tell you. There's actually, all the labels are required to have disposal instructions on there. Most of the products can be rinsed in a certain way and put into recycling or into the regular landfills, but some cannot. So pay attention to what the label tells you on disposal and follow those labels.
Mike, another question that came in is, are fruits and vegetables safe to eat if they have been treated with pesticides?
This is another question that you'll find the answer to in the label. The label will tell you if there are any restrictions on harvesting and eating anything you spray it on. Sometimes you'll see a label that says, do not harvest fruits or vegetables for 7 days after application. Or you might see a label warning you not to harvest animals or slaughter animals that you've applied a pesticide to for so many days after applying it. But there too, it's in the label. So the label is really important, and everybody should take serious heed of the label.
Well, Mike, as always, appreciate your time, your advice, and a reminder to everyone, always read the label. If you ever have questions about the label, you can reach out to Ragan and Massey directly. Thanks, Mike. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to chat again soon.
Thank you, Angie.
For more questions and answers about safety, visit the advice section of RaganandMassey.com. You can also visit the Ragan and Massey channel on YouTube for dozens of informative videos. Make sure to subscribe to the Job Done Right podcast and tell your friends too. If you have questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, please share them with us through RaganandMassey.com or on social media. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Job Done Right podcast.